Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Peh. Yesterday we learned the Mishnah that says if a murderer is mixed up with other people and we don't know who's the murderer and who are the other people, then they all go free according to Tanna Kama, and Biuda says that we take all of them and we put them in a jail cell and leave them to die. So the question is, who are these other people? Are they innocent people? Well, then you're going to leave them to die. Are they guilty people? So then why are you setting them free? And so we already saw two interpretations, and today we're going to see a third one. But they're linked together. So let's remind ourselves of the first interpretation. That was by Shemuel. And he said, we're talking about a murderer whose verdict has not been finalized yet. The Beit Din has to meet again in order to vote, to say, to make a final vote, to say, yes, here's the verdict, he is guilty, but they haven't done that yet. And so we have somebody, we kind of know he's a murderer, and once he shows up, if he could show up to Beit Din, they would declare him a murderer. But we can't quite kill him officially until we make that verdict. He's mixed up with other people who their verdict was finalized, so they definitely deserve the death penalty. And so the Banan say, listen, we can't make a vote because we have to have the guy in front of us, and we don't know who the guy is. So therefore, everybody goes free. It's their lucky day. They get away with murder, all those people. This one guy got mixed up with 100 convicted murderers, and yet we have to set them all free because one of them, their judgment was not finalized, even though we know if he came, he would be finalized. But what can we do? We can't kill him, so we can't kill anybody. We can't just mix him in with the rest of the people who get capital punishment. That's Tanna Kama. Rabbi Yehuda says that no, we're not going to let them all go. They're all murderers, actually all of them. Just one of them didn't get the final verdict. Okay, but he deserves death penalty anyway, because we really know he's guilty. We can't give him official death penalty by beheading, but you know what we can do? We can put them all in a jail cell and we feed them barley and stuff until they die. And so since they all deserve death penalty, but we can't give them official death penalty, we'll kill them in a roundabout way. So that is the opinion of Shemuel. That's his interpretation of the Mishnah. Resh Lakish comes and says, no, if it's talking about human beings, we don't do any, we let them all go. Everybody agrees, even Rabbi Yehuda, as we said before. The question here is about oxen. You have an ox that gored someone, but the verdict of the ox was not finished yet, and it was mixed up with other oxen that for sure deserve death penalty. Their verdict was finally in. Rabbanan say, whatever you would do with the owner, you do with the ox, so it's the same law, and you let all the oxen go free because one of them, their verdict was not finalized. And so we have to make the final verdict in Beit Din in front of that ox that we know is guilty, and we don't know which is guilty, so they all go free like if it was their owners. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, what are you talking about? These are oxen, are all dangerous and they're all guilty. You know what? Just put them in a pen together and let them eat bad food until they all die. That's the second interpretation. And now we get to the third. Amar Rava. Ihachi hainu dekatani Allah. Amar Rabbi Yosef afilu abba chalafta benehen. Rava says we have a braita that is related to this Mishnah. And that in that braita, Rabbi Yosef says, even if the other people that are in they have this murderer that got mixed up with other people, even if one of those other people that are part of the mixture is my father Chalafta, who was a great sage, even so, the law would be the same. Now, if indeed Abba Chalafta is among them, then neither of these interpretations will work, because Abba Chalafta is clearly not a convicted murderer, so that's not this. And here he's clearly not an animal, an ox, and so this wouldn't work. So in order for this braita to make any sense, and the braita is somehow related to the Mishnah, then we can't be talking about either of those two solutions. Ela amar Rava. So Rava is going to explain that actually the braita is missing a line, and it starts off with a different case and then is going to go into a case regarding animals. So he's going to, in part, agree with Resh Lakish because he will say he's talking about animals. But here's the full language of the cases of the Mishnah. Hachi kama shenaim shehi omdin v'yasaches benehem v'harag shenehem peturin v'amar Rabbi Yosef afilu abba chalafta benehem. So we have a new case here actually that's not in our version of the Mishnah, but it is in this braita, and it says if two people are standing together and an arrow emerged from one of them. In other words, one of them shot an arrow because there's nobody else around, so it's one of these two people that shot it, but we didn't see exactly which one of the two people shot it. So then both of them are patur, because what are you going to do? You can blame Mr. A, he'll say Mr. B did it. B, he'll say A did it. We don't know which one, so therefore we cannot convict either of them, certainly can't convict both of them. And Rabbi Yosef says this is true even if one of those two people is Abba Chalafta. Even if one of them is a very righteous person, and you know for sure he's not the murderer. Abba Chalafta is not going to go shoot someone with an arrow and murder him, so it must be the other guy, so why not convict the other guy? No, we can't do that. It's only circumstantial evidence. If the witnesses didn't actually see one of the two shoot the arrow, then even though one is righteous and the other one is a murderer, and he does he does things like this before, doesn't matter. You can't convict either of them. That's case number one, and that's the statement that we quoted above. Afilo b'chalafta benehen. V'shor shenigmar dino shitareh b'shvarim acherim me'alya soklin otan. Rabbi Yehuda omer konsin otan lakipa. And now you have the case that is being referred to in our Mishnah, which is in fact about oxen. You have an ox that it's nigmar dino, its verdict was finalized, and it got mixed up with other oxen that are innocent, just regular oxen. So it's not exactly the same as a shakish, but it is talking about oxen. So you have one guilty one that got mixed up with other oxen that are innocent. What are we going to do then? Soklinotan. So this is actually a new statement. The patur that I said in the Mishnah is going on this case. When Tanakama says patur, they'll go free. It was talking about these two people, they go free. But the one about the mixture, here is now a new opinion of Tanakama, that we give sikila to all of the animals. Now, why is that fair? Why should we give sikila to animals that didn't do anything? Just because one animal that is guilty got mixed up with them. Well, that's the way it's going to be, unfortunately, for those oxen, because that the oxen that was the verdict was decided that it's guilty. Not only do they have to kill it, it's asur b'hana'ah. You can't get any benefit from it. When it gets mixed up with 50 other oxen, no matter how many, it doesn't matter how many, 100 other oxen, then all those oxen are asur b'hana'ah. You get any benefit from them. You can't eat them, you can't sell them, you can't do anything with them. And therefore, for the owners, that's it. They lost the value of the oxen anyway. So since nobody can use the oxen anyway, no one can get any benefit from them anyway, so we may as well give sikila to all of them, and that way we'll be able to perform sikila on the oxen that was really guilty. Obviously, we wouldn't do this to people. That would not make any sense. But to oxen, if they're prohibited anyway, what are you going to do with them? No one could use them anyway, so we're going to have to kill them anyway, and therefore we may as well do sikila so that we can give the proper capital punishment to the one that deserves it. That's Tanakama, and Rabbi Yehuda says, no, we bring them all into a pen, and we feed them a barley, bad food, until they all die. Why? Because it's a big pain to go and do sikila to all of them. It's a whole procedure to do sikila. So we save the trouble. Since only one is chayav sikila, and the other ones we just have nothing to do with them. We can't use them for anything. So we'll arrange their death, but we'll do it in an easier way. There's no point in bothering to give sikila to all of them. Ve'hatanya. And now we have a beraita that supports this reading of Rava, because it says something very similar. Para shehemita v'achar kach yalda. Im ad shelo nigmar dina yalda velada mutar. Im shenigmar dina yalda velada asur. Let's say you have a cow that killed someone, and then it gave birth. Well, what do we do with the fetus, with the newborn baby calf? If it gave birth first and then it got the final verdict, so then it gave birth already while it was still not yet declared guilty. So then the fetus, the offspring, the baby calf can be used because it was born while the mother was still permitted. So you can go ahead and keep that animal and use it. However, if it gave birth after the verdict, right? It came to court and the Bet Din said, this cow, it killed someone, it's liable to the death penalty. And then it gave birth, well then the fetus was inside the mother and was part of the mother. We consider Ubad Yerech Imo. And so, just like the mother was declared guilty and prohibited, so too now it gave birth afterwards. So it was inside before, now it's out, now it's a calf, but it was part of its mother and it became declared prohibited already inside. So now it's still prohibited from any hana'ah, from any benefit from it. Now, if it got mixed up with others, it could refer to the calf or could refer to the mother. It actually doesn't matter. The point is that a prohibited calf, a calf that was declared guilty of capital punishment and cannot be used for anything, it got mixed up with others. And one of those others got mixed up with others still, even if it's a double mixture. So it's really it's a mi'ut within a mi'ut, right? There's a rov and plus a rov that should be able to make the original one batel. We don't say that. There's no bitul here. The one does not become batel even in a big mixture, even in a second mixture. So what do we do with this whole mixture? Because there's one cow there that's prohibited for use among 100 other cows. Well, we bring them all and put them into a jail cell. That would be the same as Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah, or this version of the Mishnah is the same as as the Tanakama in this second Braita. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Omer Rabbi Inotan lebedin vesoklin otan. Whereas Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon in this Braita matches up with Tanakama in the version of the Braita that Rava quoted over here, who says that we bring them all to Betin and we give sikila to all of them, even though only one of them was chayav sikila, but that one got mixed up in a whole bunch of other ones. They're all asur b'hana'ah, so we may as well give sikila to all of them so that we can fulfill the capital punishment of sikila. That's what animals get, sikila, on all of them, so that at least that one will be included. So you see that we have the same case, so it's a very similar case as the one over here, and with the same machloket about what the outcome will be, albeit by different names, but it's the same two possibilities. Amar mor, imad shelo nigmar dina yalda velada muteret. Now let's go back and analyze one part of this baraita a little bit more. It says, if it gave birth before the verdict, then that calf is permitted for use because it gave birth, it was born already before the verdict. Now we ask, wait, is that true? Even if at the time that it gored and killed someone, it was pregnant? Well, that means the fetus was inside, and the fetus was part of the mother that committed the crime. So shouldn't it be guilty because it's the whole cow committed the crime, all the parts of its body, including the fetus, should be guilty in committing the crime. So maybe it should be guilty even if it was born before the verdict. And indeed, that's what Rava says. Amar Rava, velad hanogahat asur, hi uvlada nagchu. Velad hanirbat asur, hi uvlada nirbeu. A fetus that gored someone, meaning it was inside the mother, when the mother gored, the mother and the offspring are guilty of goring. And then if the mother was declared guilty verdict, then the fetus also, even if it was born beforehand, before the verdict, the verdict should apply to the newborn calf as well. And the same thing is true if you have a fetus that was involved in bestiality, meaning that the mother was involved in sin of bestiality while it was pregnant, then the offspring also would be prohibited. And even if it was born afterwards and it was born before the verdict, nevertheless it was born, but the verdict should apply to the fetus as well as to the mother because both were involved in the sin. Okay, that's a good question. So now we modify the wording of the baraita. Ema al shelo nigmar dina ibera v'yalda velada mutar. Im nigmar dina ibera v'yalda velada asur. If the mother got pregnant and gave birth before the verdict, then the calf is permitted. Why? It was not pregnant yet when it made that sin, when it murdered. So it was not pregnant yet. Then it takes time to get to court and all that. In the meantime, after it committed the crime, it got pregnant and it gave birth. I think cows are pregnant for about 9 months, like humans. And so, 9 months went, and then it gave birth already, and only then the verdict in the court came out. So then the cow, it was not part of the crime, and it was born before the verdict. So neither the crime nor the verdict apply to the baby calf, and the baby calf is permitted. Whereas if the mother cow got pregnant and gave birth after the final verdict, it committed a crime, it killed someone, and brought to court, the verdict was given. That whole time, it was not pregnant. Afterwards, they didn't get a chance to kill it yet, and it got pregnant and gave birth. Well, that offspring will be forbidden because it was part of the mother, and the mother was prohibited for getting any benefit from it. And so just like you can't use the meat or the hide or the milk or any part of the animal, so of the mother cow, so too also the offspring. It was part of the mother while the mother was prohibited, because it gave birth only after the verdict. In that case, it would be prohibited. So if we read the Baraita like that, then it will reconcile with Rava's statement. Now this makes sense according to the opinion that says when there's two causes of something, right? You need two ingredients in order to make something happen, but one is permitted and one is forbidden. So what do you do in that case? It's relevant here because you have the mother. Yes, true, the mother is prohibited. We're talking about the last case here where the verdict was already done. And now this mother gets pregnant from a father, male, and let's say the male bull that impregnated it was permitted. It was a permitted regular bull. So there's nothing wrong with that. So this offspring is the result of two parents. The father bull that was permitted and the mother that was prohibited because the mother had already killed and was already given a verdict that is prohibited. So if you say that when there's two causes of something, and one is permitted and one is forbidden, then it's forbidden, then that would make sense. That's why this is forbidden in this case. But there's a machloket about that. There's another opinion that says, if there's two causes, one is prohibited, one is permitted, then the resulting thing is permitted. Well, in this case then, since the father was permitted, the offspring should be permitted, even if the mother was already given a guilty verdict. Rather, Ravina says, I have another way to amend the Baraita and read it as follows. If it got pregnant and gave birth before the verdict, then the offspring is permitted. Okay, that's for sure. It's before the verdict even happened, and so the mother was not yet prohibited, so then the offspring is permitted. Im ad shelo nigmar dina ibera, mishenigmar dina yelda, velada asur, ubar yerech imo hu. However, if it got pregnant before the verdict, so sometime in between, it was after the crime. If it was before the crime, then it would be guilty, because that's what Ava said before, that if the fetus was inside during the crime, then the fetus is also part of the also responsible because it was part of the mother that did the crime. But if it got pregnant after the crime but before the verdict, so now it's inside the mother, and then the verdict happens while it's pregnant, and then it gives birth afterwards, then it's prohibited. Why? Because a fetus is part of the mother, and the entire body of the mother becomes prohibited for hana'ah at the time of the verdict. And so it doesn't matter that when it got pregnant, the father was permitted. It's great, the father was permitted. The animal itself, the cow itself, the mother was permitted also at that time because the verdict wasn't given yet. And so that, it was great. That was good before. But now the fetus is in there and is growing, and then the verdict happened. So at that point, once the verdict is given, the entire body of the cow becomes prohibited, including the fetus, and that's why the fetus is prohibited. But in fact, if it got pregnant and gave birth after the verdict, that would be different, because there, since it got pregnant after the verdict and half of the cause of that pregnancy is permitted, so then you have to say ze gorem, and if you say that's mutar, then the offspring will be mutar. But if it gets pregnant before the verdict, then that's it. The father's contribution is already part of the mother while the mother gets the verdict. And so now the whole body of the mother is prohibited. Next, kol chayave mitot, shema mina mutre ledavar hamur, have mutre ledavar kal. That's not going on the next part of the Mishnah that said, let's say you have some people that are deserving of sikila, and they get mixed up with other people that are deserving of a lesser capital punishment, like chenek, and they all get mixed up, and then we don't know which one is which. What do? The answer is we give them the less severe capital punishment. So even those that deserve sikila, they'll get the lesser one. If they're mixed up with people of serefa or chenek or whatever it is, they all get the lowest common denominator type of punishment. What do we learn from here? We learn that if someone is given a warning for a high level, but in the end their sin is less, they still, that warning is still considered a warning. In other words, if I see someone that's going to do murder and it says, oh, you better not do murder because your punishment will be sikila. Now, it's actually not true. The punishment for murder is hedeg. So can he come to court and say, oh, you told me it was sikila, and I did it, but you didn't tell me it was hedeg, so you can't kill me? No, we don't say that, because if he knew it was sikila, if he thought it was sikila, and he did it anyway, which is the worst punishment, then certainly he's deserving of the lesser form of punishment of chopping off his head. And so we would still chop off his head, even though he got a warning that was for something that was worse. It would not be true the other way around. If you saw someone violating Shabbat, which is sikila, and then you told them, oh, the punishment is hedeg, so then you can't give him sikila because the punishment was less. So it seems that we can learn from this Mishnah that if someone is given a warning for a higher level capital punishment, then you can still give him a lower level punishment. Okay, that's the proposal, Shema Minah, that we can derive this from the Mishnah. However, Rabbi Yirmiyah rejects this proof. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, says, no, this is a case where all the people that are in that jail cell together, they were given a general warning, right? They said this is a warning of capital punishment. If you do this, warning of capital punishment, without specifying what type of capital punishment. And the author of our Mishnah that says when they get mixed up together, with sikila and serefa, or people got mixed up together, you give them the lower one. This Tana is the Tanakama of the following Baraita, where it says, regarding people, other people that are liable to the death penalty, according to the Torah, we can only give them capital punishment if there is Aidah, that means if there's judges, 23 judges, and there has to be witnesses, and there has to be a warning. And the witness, whoever's giving the warning has to let them know that the thing that you're about to do, you will be deserving of capital punishment. But that's it. You just have to say capital punishment, and you don't have to specify which one it is. And then once, if they still do it, and they say, yes, I know, and I'm doing it on that condition, we bring them to court. And if it happened to be Shabbat, then we would give him sikila. And if it happened to be murder, then we would do hedeg. But you don't have to tell them what type of capital punishment it is. Rabbi Yehuda, however, disagrees and says, no, you have to also know and tell him the type of capital punishment. And so, if our Mishnah is Tanakama, then that's why you can put them all together. It's not because a warning for sikila will include the possibility of killing him with something lower. No, not because of that. It's because as long as you said it's a capital punishment, then it doesn't matter what type of capital punishment it is. You don't have to specify the type of capital punishment at all. So there's no proof for this principle from here. Tanakama yalef mikoshesh. Now, what's the source for each of them? The mikoshesh etzim is the source for Tanakama. Why? Because mikoshesh etzim, someone had to warn him because they end up stoning him. So he must have had a warning. Now, what did the witnesses that gave him a warning, what did they say? Did they say you're going to get this type of capital punishment? It's impossible because they didn't know what type of capital punishment until after they asked Moshe. And Moshe himself didn't know right away, and he had to go ask Hashem and get the answer. And so they could not have told him, oh, you don't do this capital punishment as sikila, because they didn't know that. So we learned from the Mikoshesh that the witnesses just said, listen, we don't know what the exact punishment is, but we already know from the Torah that it's going to be capital punishment. So don't collect those branches. Otherwise, you're going to get capital punishment. And he did it anyway. And so they brought him to Moshe, and then Moshe found out it's sikila, and they gave him sikila. So we learn from here that you don't have to specify the type of capital punishment. Rabbi Yehuda omer mekoshesh horat sha'ah haita. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, I disagree. Mekoshesh etzim, that was a one-time only verdict. because it was an emergency situation. This guy was violating in public and was going to ruin the whole thing. And so, as a one-time only, hora'at sha'ah, they said we're going to kill him even though he didn't have proper warning that specified sikilah, because they didn't know it. But from now on, that's not the law, and you have to give the exact punishment in order to give someone any capital punishment. We next go on to the next part of the Mishnah that says, Haniskalin banisrafin. If people that deserve sikilah get mixed up among people that deserve serefa, then what do you do with them? Well, it depends. Rabbi Shimon thinks that you give them all sikilah because he thinks that sikilah is less severe than serefa, so you give them all the lesser. And Chachamim, who think that serefa is the lesser form, says you give them all serefa. You do the lowest common denominator between them because you don't know which one is which. That's the version that we have. Matni le Rav Yechezkel Rami Bere Hanisrafin baniskalin Rabbi Shimon Yomer Don Biskila Shere Serefa Chamura. However, Rav Yechezkel, he taught to Rami, his son, a different version of the Mishnah that switched around the order and said that if nisrafin, which implies that nisrafin are the fewer, get mixed up with a majority of niskalin, then Rabbi Shimon says you give them all sikila because serefa is more stringent and you give them sikila, which is less stringent. Amar le Rav Yehuda, Abba, la titniye hachi. Rav Yechezkel had two sons, Rami, to whom he was teaching his version of the Mishnah, and the other son is Rav Yehuda, who heard him teaching it that way. And he objected, and he says, Father, do not teach the Mishnah that way. This is not the correct version of the Mishnah. Ma'iriya disrefa chamura, tepuk le deruba niskalin ninhu. Why would it say that the reason is because serefa is more chamur? Right, look at the Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon says, since they got mixed up, you give them all sikila, because sikila is better than serefa. Serefa is the worst type of punishment. So you see, that's the reason he said. According to this reason, it doesn't matter which one is the majority or the minority. Even if the minority is sikila, you give them all sikila because it's the less severe punishment. Whereas if you feel like you need to change around the order, and that's to say, oh, it's only if it's nisrafin baniskalin, well then in that case we would say the rule is, you know why they get sikila? Because sikila is the majority. Oh, because the majority is sikila, that's why they all get sikila. But if it was the other way around, oh no, then you follow the majority and they would get serefa. But that's not true. Rabbi Shimon says they all get sikila no matter what. Doesn't matter who the majority and minority is. And therefore leave it just as it is. Niskalin bin Nisrafin is better that way. Even if the Niskalin is the minority that gets mixed up with Nisrafin, the majority, still they all get serefa. So still they all get sikila because sikila is the less stringent. So then the father asks, okay, so how should I teach it? And Rav Yehuda says like this: Haniskalin banisrafin. That's what we have. Rabbi Shimon Omer Yidonu Biskila Serefa Chamura. Right, read it just like it is. Even if the minority is sikila, nevertheless you give them all sikila because sikila is less chamur than serefa. Then we ask, Hachamim omrim Yidonu Bisrefa Sikila Chamura Tepuk le'deruba nisrafin inhu. But then we'll get mixed up with the sefa, where Chachamim says they should all get serefa because sikila is more stringent. Since sikila is more stringent, give them the less stringent one, serefa. But if you have the order like this, niskalin ba nisrafin, so I would say, oh, you know why Chachamim say nisrafin? Because that's the majority. But if it was the other way around, then maybe not. So whatever way you teach it, you're going to be confused according to this opinion or that opinion. And Rav Yehuda answers, Hatam Rabbanan hu dekamru le Rabbi Shimon. Lididachta amar serefa chamura lo sikila chamura. No, because Rabbi Shimon is quoted first, so the order should follow the chidush that we want to give according to the Rabbi Shimon. And that chidush is that it doesn't matter, even if the sikila is the minority, we're still going to give them all sikila because it's less stringent. And Rabbanan, they're only responding to the Bishimon. And they're saying, according to you, that you say Serefa is Chamura, we disagree with that point. We think Serefa is not the most stringent and give them more Sikila. No, Sikila is more stringent and then give them Serefa. And so it's clear that Rabbanan are simply responding to Rabbi Shimon and saying we disagree with that point. But you can't learn from here that according to Rabbanan, you would follow the majority because they didn't make up the case, right? They're just responding to the case, not making up the case, and therefore we would not get confused about Rabbanan. Amar le Shemuel Rav Yehuda, Shinena la tema le Abu Chachi. After this incident happened, Shemuel told his student Rav Yehuda, Shinena, sharp one, do not speak this way to your father, right? Because he told his father, Abba, right? Father, don't teach it this way. It's not nice to contradict your father in that way. Tanya, Hadesheya Abiv Obed al Divrei Torah. Lo yomar lo Abba, Abba al Divrei Torah. We have a braita that teaches, let's say you see your father who is going against a Doraita law. Don't tell him, Abba, you're violating a law of the Torah. It's not respectful to say that. Even if it's true, it's not respectful. But so what do? How do you say it? Ela omer lo Abba, kach ketiba Torah. Rather you say, Father. Does it say that in the Torah that you're allowed to do what you're doing? Right? Doesn't it say you're not allowed? Now we ask, sof, hainuach. Well, in the end, that's the same thing. Even though he's saying it as a question, it's still a very accusatory question, right? It kind of depends on the tone. But it's like, Abba, it says that in Torah you're allowed to do that. What are you thinking? So it could still be disrespectful. Ela omer lo Abba, mikra katub b'Torah kachu. Rather, you should say it in a more subtle way. Father, there's a pasuk in the Torah that says this, right? You just like as if you're teaching a pasuk. Isn't that a very interesting pasuk that I was just thinking of? And then the father will make the connection and realize that what he did was wrong. But you try to say it in the most pleasant and respectful way possible. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.